Hello, everyone. This is Chiara Nanni speaking from this side of the screen. I am a web editor here at AppsBuilder, and it will be my pleasure today to host this webinar with you and take you through some useful insights and tips on mobile optimized content. Together to let you know how useful a bit of content marketing can be to get the most out of your mobile app because this can be very useful because it will allow you to make a great app with great content, but also make sure that it makes it to the app stores, which then also means that it will make it to your customers' mobile devices, which is everybody's ultimate goal. So, welcome and thank you all for joining this webinar today. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can tweet us using the hashtag for today's webinar, which is content for mobile, as you can read from the screen. And my colleague Serena is on the other side of the screen, and she will make sure to answer them live and as thoroughly as possible. So for those of you who are not familiar yet with AppsBuilder, let me just give you a quick introduction about us. AppsBuilder was born in 2010 with the aim of turning what is typically an expensive and time-consuming process into a piece of cake. So it's a super easy process that doesn't really require any coding skills. AppsBuilder is the only do-it-yourself tool that combines three functions into one single panel. So let me tell you a little bit what they are. First of all, you can create mobile apps for iPhone, for Android, and for HTML web apps. Next, you can promote your app using tools like the app landing page, which is a very specific and dedicated feature we're very proud of, social sharing, QR code generators, and a very detailed process to submit to the app stores. Lastly but not least, you can engage with your mobile audience, and you can use things like mailing lists, form generators, push notifications, promo pop-ups, and much more. Now, about today's webinar, here is a very quick overview of what we will be covering. So for starters, we will go over a few basic principles of writing for mobile, which is basically a little bit of content marketing, to make sure that what you're trying to say matches what your users think you said, which is not the easiest of tasks. I'm sure you will agree with me on that. Then we will cover some hands-on tips on how to optimize your content for mobile devices to make the most out of it, as I told you before, together with some do's and don'ts examples that I'll show you further on. Then I'm going to give you a little advice on how to type in the necessary information about your app so that when you start the submission to the stores process, everything goes smoothly and you won't have to worry about being rejected. Finally, we're going to have a short Q&A session where you can put forward all your questions. So just type them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as possible in the final part of the webinar. Also, remember, please note that this webinar will be recorded and it will be emailed to each one of you afterwards. So if you have additional questions that I don't get to answer today, or if you wish to listen again to specific instructions or specific tips, no problem, because you'll have the chance to go over it anytime you want, starting tomorrow morning. So let's get started. First of all, to start off with the right foot and craft some really great content, which is our ultimate goal here, you should ask yourself the ultimate question, which is, why should customers care about what you have to say? Because with that much content available out there and so many businesses that are racing to sell the most products or the most services to the most people, it's obviously hard to position a business at the top of a consumer's mind. So as you can see from the little drawing over there, what you should do is try to match what you want to say to what your customers are interested in and get to that little gray area in between that actually generates relevance, making ends meet. Because I'm sure also that all of you know that mobile and specifically the app industry has been growing nonstop and it's going to continue doing so. So it is opening a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges. Basically, tablets and smartphones, which all of you are familiar with, I'm sure, are more popular than desktop nowadays. So there is a challenge here, and that's what we're going to cover. So how does all this relate to you and to the way you decide you want to create your content? So here's where we get to the core of the matter, which I call the ugly truth, which is the fact that any mobile user is very time poor and expects a lot. I mean, wouldn't you? You're probably all smartphone users or tablet users, so you can reflect yourself in this. And your content of your mobile apps should reflect that as well. It should respond to a need, basically, which is usually for any mobile user the completion of a task. This can be the purchase of an item, maybe checking a timetable for flights or trains, public transportation, or maybe following an event, finding where a restaurant is. The possibilities are endless. But whatever the task, you can help yourself by following one simple rule. Any guesses? Anyone? Well, I'll tell you. You should kiss. No, I'm not going crazy, I promise. Kiss, in this case, stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with this. This is a basic design and content creation rule, which goes hand in hand with the concept that less is more. So at this point, you might be tempted to ask yourself exactly how am I supposed to do that? How am I going to do that? Well, if you scavenge the web looking for tips and tricks and information on how to create awesome mobile content, you'll probably get lost. There's just so much information, so many points of view, many of them very interesting, but there's just a lot. So what to focus on and what to address in this task is basically a mission itself. But fear not, because I've done the job for you. And I've selected 5 principles for you, which I think are key to our goal here. So let's get started. Principle number 1 is that you should always remember to fulfill a need, as we were saying earlier. Your content should answer some unmet need or question that your target users are asking themselves. Um, it has to be useful in some way to the customer, and it should, if you can, make sure that it goes above and beyond what your customers are expecting. So keep it simple, as we were saying earlier. And what do I want to do here? Ask yourself. There's different types of needs you might be wanting to fulfill. Some of them are practical needs, for example, as we were saying, checking flight times or finding where a location is, reading about event details. For example, is your app is dedicated to a special event, or if events are part of your app, depending on your business. Another type of need you might be wanting to fulfill is emotional, which can be something about bios, maybe speakers of an event you're hosting, fun facts about a certain topic, or maybe even gift tips. For example, if you're a flower store and you have your own app, of course you sell flowers, but maybe you can add a section dedicated to the meaning of them and push it during a holiday like Valentine's Day. So it can be fun for your customers to not only buy your product, but know more about it, maybe selecting within more than one type, depending on what they're trying to say. Principle number 2 is that you should understand your audience's habits. Because the more you know about them, the more compelling your content and therefore your app will be. Why? Because in this way, you will have created the content and the app specifically just for them. And that will resonate with them, trust me. So know your audience and ask yourselves a series of questions. For example, are they smartphonistas or tablet users? This can be relevant if you find out that most of your users are tablet users, and then you can arrange your design settings of your app for it to be used on a tablet rather than a smartphone. Another question you can ask yourself is do they access the content by topic or by format? Also, this can be addressed when you are setting your design features of your app and the type of content you're crafting. For example, the way you separate it, divide it into lists, in chunks, bulks, and so on. Also, you should try to remember what is their attention span. I'm sure all of you know that most of the time it's not very long, not very wide. So depending on what you're trying to say, what your core business is, and the information you want to pass on, you can arrange it, dividing it into sections and lists, or as we were saying earlier, topics or formats that goes on with the attention span of your users. And last but not least, ask yourself if they value media content like videos or podcasts and other types of content that is not just text. All of this can add a lot of value to your app, depending on your business, of course. But it does create a nice content mix that will help you when you move on and deliver your app to your users. All of this is going to help you get to our third principle, which is that always set the goal to deliver a great read. Because ultimately, what a user wants to do when he or she opens an app and reads about it is to have fun, is to enjoy it and not make it hard for them to go through it. So basically, what I would tell you is to write the way you speak, because it's the simplest way and the easiest way to pass on what you're trying to say. And remember that whatever you deliver should be consistent, it should be human, and it should be interesting. And how do you do that? Well, to make your read consistent, you should basically give useful information, which responds to what we were saying earlier about meeting a need for the completion of a task or the specific request by your user. How do you make it human? Well, step away from the sales speak, because you don't need to be a marketeer to get to the point where you actually sell something or deliver a service to your users. But be honest about it, and don't worry about putting sell, sell, sell in there, because if you present something in a very nice way and give useful information, as we were saying, you'll probably reach your goal anyway. And last but not least, remember to be interesting. So you can give your point of view, you should give your point of view, but you can also make it simple to relate to, because ultimately customers probably do want to buy something, but they'll also appreciate some good advice. So you should definitely give it to them. Moving on, we get to our principle number 4. As we were saying earlier, mentioning design settings when you craft your content, you should rethink user experience using design. Because don't forget that the best app and the best content is the one that is user friendly and makes a great user experience. This is very important, because you should remember that simply trying to shrink the desktop experience is not going to work. As we were saying earlier, um, desktops are almost being totally surpassed by mobile content, smartphones, and tablets. And your content should not just adapt, it should be crafted specifically for that. So you should tailor it. And remember that if you do that, you're actually branding yourself in a whole different way that will allow you to get to your goal a lot faster, a lot easier, and a lot better. So, for example, did you know that 76% of smartphone users read in portrait? This is a very interesting piece of information, because this will allow you to craft your content when you use design features, remembering that. This means, for example, that that if you want to insert a video or an image or specific chunks of text, well, you're going to make them in portrait mode rather than landscape mode, because it's more likely to be appreciated by your users, depending on this particular piece of information. Because think about it, we all hate it when we spend more time trying to find out where something is or how something works, rather than actually using it, reading through it when we have trouble finding the information we're looking for. And not just because it's hidden in there somewhere, but it's just really hard on the eyes. So keep the design clear, consistent, intuitive, and the navigation through your app will be swift, and users will come back to it a lot more. Moving on, remember, this is very important, to treasure feedback. As we were saying, all of this is based on the assumption that you're crafting content that is tailored on your users' and customers' needs. So treasure their feedback, and first of all, set your business goals to know what you're trying to obtain, where you're trying to get, and what your ultimate objective is, and then compare all that with your audience's needs, as we were saying earlier, and find how you can match these two things. A very useful tool in doing that is using the analytics. What you see on the screen is a screenshot of a breakdown of users by device we've taken from our dashboard or our platform. And this is very useful, because specifically for every app, you can check how much is being used, when, on depending on which device, what type of users. And with this very useful and valuable information, you can craft the next content you're going to deliver. You can make useful updates, and you can keep reassessing your goals, your market, your target market, and delivering great content through time, not just not just once when you start. So now that we've gone through the theory, how about we get a little practical? So dig in some hands-on tips to make all this happen, because theory is very nice. We all know that. But here I'm going to give you a few tips on actually how to do that when you're actually on your computer writing your content for your awesome app. So, number one, keep it relevant. Remember to answer a key question, because quality content means first of all relevant content. I'm sure, like you, like me, all of you probably hate it when you're looking for something and your information is hidden under a bunch of things that you really don't care about. Because, as we were saying earlier, the attention span of users is very, very low. So for example, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think the average user's attention span is? Do you know? Well, I'm going to tell you, and it's between 3 and 5 seconds. Yes, that is very, very, very quick, really tight, and it that is mainly because mobile sites and applications are used to access information on the go, as you all know. So when there is little time to skim text and even less to understand language that isn't simple or direct. So, in other words, you should avoid writing about topics that are not tightly linked to your core message. And I mean, we all like a good metaphor here and there once in a while, but it might get in the way of what you're trying to say. So, remember the principle we were saying earlier, KISS, and keep it simple. Tip number two is about content distribution. And this is very interesting. It's very structured. I hope this will help you when you craft your content depending on what you're trying to say. Um, so, does your text aim at informing, maybe, or persuading, maybe negotiating? So, the action you're trying to do may differ, and what you're trying to deliver may differ as well. Is it going to be an advertising text? Is it going to be a press release, maybe a notice? The way you can craft your content, keeping in mind these questions, is by using three strategies, which you see right here, which are BLIM, BLOB, and BLOB. Um, uh, so I'm going to tell you about them right now. I can see that there's some questions popping up, so I just want to ask you to bear with me a little bit until the end of the webinar. And as I told you at the beginning, I'm going to answer all of them as swiftly and as thoroughly as I can. So let's dig in these three strategies, which are not three names given by very cruel parents to three brothers. Number one is blot. This strategy means bottom line on top, and you can think about it as an inverted pyramid, which you can see on the screen right here. Divided into three chunks where the most important part of your information is at the top. The less important is in the middle, and whatever else information you want to give, but that is not really important, is at the bottom. So this strategy allows you to get to the point first and then expand on the topic. It is great for blog posts, press releases maybe, or notices. And the reason is that it catches your reader's attention right away. We're going to talk about this further on. But this is basically what this strategy is used for. Number two is the BLIM strategy, which stands for bottom line in the middle. You can see my little hamburger on the screen here, which I think nicely explain how this strategy works. Basically, it is also known as the kiss, kick, kiss technique, as you can see, meaning that there is a chunk of negative news between two pieces of positive news. So as you can imagine, I'm sure this strategy is great for bad news, or for example, payment notifications, which nobody likes. The reason this works is because it softens the overall effect of your message. If you were to use the the strategy we saw before, where you give right away the payment notification, it's probably going to bother your user. It's probably going to close whatever message he or she is reading and feel annoyed and not actually do what you're trying to achieve, which is, for example, with a payment, pay. Strategy number 3 is the blob strategy, which stands for bottom line on the bottom. As you can see, this is a regular pyramid. Where at the top you give some useful information. With that useful information, you generate a need in your users, and at the bottom, once they're hooked, you give the main message, which is related to the action you're trying to achieve. So you gradually lead your readers to your desired conclusion. This is great for purchase offers or subscriptions where you're trying to convince your user to actually do something you want and persuading them to take a desired action. Maybe subscribe to your newsletter or actually buy something, depending if you're a business trying to sell a product or a service. Tip number 3 is that you should remember to use one idea per paragraph. This is because content is never in the spotlight, actually. As you can see from the screen, and I'm sure you can confirm this by thinking of any experience you've had going through the web, 80% of the time users spend going through a web page, for example, is dedicated to page layout, to how things are distributed. Most of the time, this is not a conscious process. We're just brought to do that. And so what remains is a mere 20%, which is dedicated to what actually is on the page and what actually the content is it's trying to say, and the information it's trying to pass on. So how can you help yourself? Well, headlines. They're very important, as we were saying earlier, because they allow you to catch your reader's attention. You can follow a few basic indications on how they should be. They should be concise, they should be interesting, and suggesting but not revealing. So you just don't have to give it away all too soon. But cut your reader's attention just enough so that they keep on reading and going through the rest of your content. Tip number 4 is about what you can actually do with your content, what you can actually put in there to help yourself in delivering the content and information you're trying to give out. It's about action words, lists, links, buttons, and therefore calls to action, which actually do the trick in helping you achieving your goal. So what you can do is that whenever you use an action word, you can actually personalize it. So how many times have you seen or used or been annoyed by the classic action word that says submit? It's very general, it's not very specific, and it doesn't really help you in remembering what you're doing. Because, for example, as you can see from the screen, that is an example of a form that I've screenshotted from our dashboard in our platform to book a table. So you can see you insert your name, your phone number, number of guests, seating, date and time. And if I had put there a simple submit, it would have brought my mind off from the task I'm actually doing. Book your table is more direct, it's very personal, and it's tailored to the thing I'm trying to do here. So you can use different words, maybe do, see, make, get, purchase, start, depends on what you're trying to do. But personalizing is always a good idea. Um, I'm reading that somebody is having problems with his audio. Just let me check very quickly if everything is fine. Okay, so it appears to be working fine. I'm glad. Very good. So moving on, what you can also do is prioritize. If you have a lot of information that you want to give, but as we were saying, you're trying to keep it simple, direct, and not mix it up with too much non-useful information, well, use bullet points. And there's different type of those that you can use depending on what you're trying to say. So you can use numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, or letters, which have different uses. For example, if you want to prioritize or just simply differentiate, well, if you prioritize, you better use numbers. If you just want to differentiate, then you can use letters. Last but not least, it's lists. When you use those, which are very, very useful because they're very, very helpful in keeping the information clear in your user's mind, just remember not to cloud it up too much because when they get to the end of the list, if the list is too long, they probably forget what they read at the beginning of the list. So just to give you a little advice, average number of elements per list should be not over 10. So I would advise you not to go beyond that. And to our last, not our last, our tip number 5. I'm sorry. As we were saying earlier, you should use rich media content because in this way you can tailor for every taste of your user. You can make an interesting and appealing content mix that it's going to keep your users busy but not tired. So you can use videos, you can add images. Remember what we were saying earlier, that, for example, most users read in portrait, so you can tailor your images to that, or podcasts and other tools which you may think about depending if they come useful to your goal in your business, like graphs or charts and infographics. I'm sure all of you know that infographics are really big right now. A lot of businesses use them to pass on their information and details about their work, their services, their products, or to speak about their core market. So if you have those, if you want to use those, if you're fond of them, if you like creating them, well, you can insert them in your app, and there's surely going to be a piece of information that is very valued. Moreover, if you're, for example, a business like a restaurant or an event venue or a store, something I would advise you to put in is a direction widget because if your customers and users are actually trying to buy something from you, they probably want to know and know easily how to find you. So direction widgets are very useful, and they are extra features that do give that added value that you are looking for. And now for our last tip, I wanted to do a little test. I'm going to show you a piece of text that I've gotten from the internet. It's one of our blog pages. It's very short, and I'd like you to read through it. Not pay a lot of attention to it. Just go through it as fast as you can. Don't worry. Um, Let me know if you can actually read through it fine. I'm sure you will. So, even if you aren't done yet with reading it, I'm sure you did understand everything that was in it. Did you? Oops, sorry. Okay. So, I'm pretty sure that all of you understood it perfectly without having any problems, and that is because it has been proved that people can read and understand a text despite of massive misspelling mistakes, which I'm sure you found in this little piece of text. Why is that? And although it is true, I'm sure that all of you agree with me that typos will drive users away from content because it is a sign of carelessness and not paying a lot of attention to what you're actually doing. Why is that? Well, it's because of the spinach in your teeth syndrome, SITS. This is actually what explains the effect of poor proofreading on users. And this leads us to our sixth and last tip on how to craft great content for your mobile app. Basically, you should not forget to proofread because it's never enough. And the spinach in your teeth syndrome explains why. Because ask yourself, how do you react when someone who is talking to you happens to have a spinach leaf stuck between the teeth? I'm sure it has happened to everybody, every one of us, at least once in their lifetime. You focus more on the spinach leaf you're finding in your the person you're talking to, trying not to think about it, trying to look elsewhere. But basically, what happens is that whatever this person is saying, you forget or really don't even listen to because you are distracted. So, no matter how interesting your interlocutor's speech is, the only thing you will be able to focus on is that spinach leaf. This is a little example, a do and don't of what I've been telling you so far, just to let you know how nicely crafted content for a basic, in this case, about us page for your app would look like. So what you're seeing there is a description of a wine and dine venue, maybe a restaurant. Just saying a few things about the restaurant, the place itself, an invitation to users to come and enjoy a bottle of wine, maybe, and opening times of the venue, very clear and very nicely stated. At the top of the screenshot, you're going to see the address of the venue with very basic information, but very clear. So I'm sure that by looking at the screen without even thinking about it, what you see on the left-hand side looks very nice to you, or at least very, very clean, very clear, and full of useful information. What you see on the right instead is the same information, but clouded with information that is not interesting or useful. Editing, formatting, and design of it is very unappealing because it doesn't help you to go through it. It doesn't help your mind to read through what is actually important or what you're actually looking for. It doesn't have information on opening times, and the address is very vague. It just says that it's in Milano. So what you see here is on the right is information that might be useful, information that might be what your user is looking for, but that your user is not going to understand, not care about, and probably pass on to the next. So this is a basic about us page, but you can apply the same principles to any page you're going to craft, any content you're going to put in your app. And as you can see, it's just a matter of taking a little care of what you're trying to say and distributing in the way that it's easy on the fingers and also nice for the eyes. Now that we are done with our hands-on tips on how to write amazing content for your mobile app, I'm going to go through with you a little bit a few tips on how to start the submission process to the app stores once you are done with your app and your content is crafted entirely. Because once you've gone through all that, once you've followed all the tips and all the rules and done a great job, well, you have to get it out there to the world, right? So let's start. What you see here is a list of what you will find on our platform. On our dashboard, when you start the submission process, there is a list of fields that you are supposed to um, fill in with information that is going to help you get your app to the app stores. We get a lot of requests from our users and our customers about the best way to make sure that their app actually makes it. So it's really a hot topic. Obviously, it's pretty important and it does require some extra attention. So I invite you all to do that when you start submitting your app. But no worries, that's what I'm here for. So I'm going to help you remember a few things. When you insert your app name, you should remember that it should be no longer than 12 characters. This is because, as we were saying earlier, keeping it simple does help. And it also makes it easy for you to have an app that also has a catchy name, which catches your user's attention. Language, you should insert the language your app is in. You can have apps in different languages, but the language you use actually reflects your target market, so it's pretty important. And uh, you should remember to put that in as one of the first pieces of information. Description of your app, as you can imagine, is essential for search engines because when someone is looking for something, it does enter a few keywords, and these do relate to your app. So make sure that when you do that, you put particular intention in doing that. You should not go over 4,000 words. Um, but this everything that I'm telling you now about these fields is what you will find on the dashboard page when you do that with tips that are going to say exactly what I'm saying to you now. Moving on, the category of your app is essential for store searches. As you know, on the app stores, apps are divided into categories that help users find what they are looking for. Um, and they are particularly interesting and very useful to you because they are used when someone is not sure of what app he's trying to find, of what company, what business, but is interested in something that speaks of a certain category. So maybe restaurants, venues, or events, bookstores, um, or something more specific like retails, conferences, fitness. The categories are endless, and you should take particular care in remembering that when you insert your fields. Then keywords, as we were saying earlier, speak of your core business, and when your users are searching for a certain app, that's what they type in. So find out, realize what the best keywords for your app are, and insert them in there. I would advise you not to go over 5, 6, or 7. URL support is when you have so much amazing content you want to put in your app, but that you decide not to put directly in your app, but keep for the users that are particularly interested. So URL support helps your users access extra content. This is a very nice and useful added value feature that you should consider if there's a lot of content you want to share with your target audience, but you don't want to put it all in your app directly. Moving on, as you can imagine, contact details are particularly important because they allow your users to contact you in the case of need. And I'm sure you will agree with me that one of the most annoying or best parts of any service or business is the customer care. So if you allow your users to get in touch with you very easily, very clearly, that is in itself going to give you and your business very nice added value. Lastly, you're going to find a field about privacy policy. I know most of users, most of the people don't really care about that, don't really put much attention to it. But for that one user who is going to go and read it and go and look for it, you should put some attention into that too, because it does serve the purpose of informing your customers. And for those of them who are going to look for it, it is nice for them to actually go and find it. So we are now done with our webinar today. I hope that tips, tricks, and principles that we have gone through have been clear and useful to you, that you will use them while creating your awesome and amazing content for mobile. And now we're going to have a Q&A session where I'm going to try and answer to all your questions. And bear with me a little bit while I go through them, and I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, so I've gone through a few of the questions I see on the screen. First of all, just let me tell you that if there is any piece of the webinar that you missed because maybe the audio skipped a little bit or for a few seconds, just let me know in the live chat and I'll go back and tell you about what you've missed. Mm, there's a question about the slide on reading in portrait mode as opposite to reading in landscape mode. I'm just going to go right to it. So you can read it again. So basically, what I wanted to tell you here is that when you craft content for your mobile device, you have to remember that it's not going to look like the same thing when you use it on your desktop. This means that, as you know, smartphones can be read and used in portrait mode, which means straight up, or in landscape mode, which is more horizontal. What I can tell you here is that when you craft your content that is not simply text, but when you have much richer content that includes other things like we were saying, videos or images, because a lot of content has a lot of images. Um, what you should keep in mind in this case, the fact that most people read in portrait, is that you should optimize your images and your videos to the dimensions of reading in portrait. This is not a very complicated thing to do. It just means that, for example, if you're adding a picture about your venue, maybe a picture of the entrance of your store, if you have a store, you might want to go for either very small landscape picture that will actually fit in portrait mode, or a portrait mode image that is not going to make your users go back and forth to fill in and read through all your content. So I hope this answers your questions. And I'm just going to check if there's anything else some of you is asking. Okay, so now that we are done, I don't see any more questions. I'm just going to show you where you can go on our platform to get extra help on topics and information about what I've been telling you today. Um, this is our website, as you can see, and I'm going to put it in English so easy to go